What up YouTube? Today is Tuesday, February 20th, and today I want to talk about what's in my everyday camera bag. One of the first things I want to say though is thank you to everybody who subscribed to the channel. We actually hit 100 subscribers last week. I think we're at like 110 subs as of yesterday, so I'm super pumped about that. Thank you a ton for subscribing, and let's get right into the video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jason Weber. I'm a photographer that shoots cityscapes, landscapes, urban photos, street photos, just really photos of all sorts, and I recently started making videos all about photography. Over the years, it's taken me forever to figure out exactly what kind of camera gear I want to use and what I want to carry around every single day. So that's what I want to go over today. Exactly what I carry around in my bag on a day-to-day basis to make the photos that I make. I really love these what's in your camera bag videos. I watch them all the time, so I figured why not make my own and see what you guys think about it. My setup is constantly changing. I'm constantly selling old gear, buying new gear, and changing up what I use on a day-to-day basis, but this is the setup that I've found for the past several months that really works for me and really gets the job done for the stuff that I like to shoot. The first logical thing for us to go over is the camera bag itself. This is the Peak Design 30-liter everyday backpack. It's an awesome bag, and the three things that I really like about it is that number one, it looks good, number two, it fits all of the gear that I need it to fit, and number three, it's really well built. The only gripe that I have with this bag is that sometimes it becomes a little bit uncomfortable if you pack it down with a ton of gear. The reason for that is because of how thin these straps are. As you can see, they're really thin, and when they sit on your shoulder, they kind of pinch down on your shoulders and might be a little bit more cumbersome than some other backpacks are. It does have a chest strap and a waist strap that help that out a little bit, but I find that the straps on this are still a little bit less supportive than some other camera bags on the market. One of the cool features of this bag is that the sides unzip like this, which number one allows for you to very easily grab some of your gear out of it, but also gives you these storage compartments on the side. So for example, on this side, I have all of my batteries that are for my cameras inside of the bag, and then on this side, I actually have some film for my film camera that is stored on this side. So I don't want to dive super deep into the stuff that's in the sides of the bags, but I'm going to close it up now and we're going to talk about the stuff that's on the inside of the camera bag. All right, now we're going to get into the good stuff. Let's talk about some cameras. So if I open up this side of the bag and I dive in, the first thing that you'll see is my FujiFilm X-T2. This is my digital camera that I use solely for still photography. I don't do any videos with this at all. When I first started my YouTube channel, the first one or two videos that you saw were made with this camera, but I very quickly bought a different camera to start making videos with that's a heck of a lot better at video than this is. So I absolutely love this camera. I've had it ever since it came out. And I've shot just about every system. I've shot Sony, Canon, Nikon, Panasonic, just about everything, but for some reason, for stills, Fujifilm has always been my favorite. It comes down to a couple of different reasons. Number one is how incredibly small and lightweight their cameras are. They're much smaller than the traditional full-frame competitors, and they're just much more convenient to carry around, especially if you're doing things like street photography that you want to be a little bit more discreet about. Number two, the lens selection with Fujifilm is amazing. You can get anything from an ultra-wide angle to a super telephoto, and you're guaranteed that it's going to be just supreme optical quality and that the lenses are going to be incredible. Third, Fujifilm, in my opinion, has the absolute best bang for the buck in cameras nowadays. The next thing we've got to talk about is Fujifilm lenses. So this lens right here is a 35mm f2.0. It's a very standard focal length. It's equivalent in full frame terms to a 50mm lens. So it's not too wide, it's not too zoomed in. It's just about what the eye naturally sees. I'll show a couple pictures that I've taken with it right here. This lens is on my camera probably 70 or 75% of the time. I absolutely love this lens because it's super compact, it's super lightweight, and it's just really versatile. This focal length just really works for me lately, and for the stuff that I've been shooting, I really highly recommend this lens. For the next lens, we're gonna dive right back into the camera bag. So if we open it up, dive in pretty much to the same spot where the Fujifilm X-T2 was, we find the 23mm f1.4 lens. This lens, in terms of focal length, is very similar to that of the 35mm. It's just a little bit wider. I'll show some examples of the photos I've taken with it right here. On a daily basis, if I'm trying to decide which lens I'm gonna go out with, if I'm just deciding to take one lens, it's definitely gonna be between this 23mm and this 35mm lens. If I want something that's a little bit wider, I'm probably gonna pick this, the 23mm. If I want something that's a very standard focal length, that's very good for things like street photography, probably gonna go with the 35. I've been shooting with the 35 much more often lately, but over the past 2 or 3 years, this lens, or a lens very similar to this, has been my standard focal length that I've used for a long time now. The last lens that I want to talk about is on the other side of the bag. It is the FujiFilm 50 to 140mm f2.8 lens. This is probably my favorite lens in terms of what it's capable of doing, but it's actually my least used lens just because of how big it is. Because this lens is able to zoom in so far, you're able to accomplish what's called lens compression, which allows for you to essentially have a subject in the foreground and make the background behind them look much larger than it actually is in reality. I'll show you a couple examples of what I mean by that right here. The 50 to 140 is pretty much the standard lens that most people would use for things like sports photography and maybe even portraits, but the reason that I like it the most is just because of those really creative cityscapes and landscapes that you're able to get with this lens. It's funny to look at these lenses and think about which ones I use the most and which ones I use the least. So for example, this one, that's the most expensive one, I barely ever use it just because, like I said, it's humongous. And then this one on my right hand side is the one that I use the most, and it's 100% the cheapest lens of all of these. I think it's like 1/3 or 1/4 the price of these other two lenses, but I use it all the time, probably 70 or 75% of the time. So that's it for my Fujifilm setup, but I do actually have one other digital camera, and it's the one I'm recording on right now, the Panasonic Lumix G9. I primarily use this camera for video, but it actually does a great job of taking photos as well. The reason I bought it for video is because it has that ability to flip out the screen, and it also has really good face tracking autofocus, so it makes it really easy when I'm shooting vlog style videos to essentially just point the camera at myself, talk to it, and just get the job done. The lens I have on it is the Leica 8 to 18mm f2.8 to 4 lens. It's an ultra wide angle lens that again is super good for those vlog style videos when I'm just pointing the camera at myself and talking to it, and it's also super good for getting those really vast scenic landscapes. These Fujifilm lenses that I have right here aren't really that wide. The 23mm is the widest thing that I have, and it's not that wide of a lens at all. So this 8 to 18mm lens on the Panasonic gets the job done for those ultra wide angle landscapes when I need to take those kind of photos. Finally, the microphone that I use in this camera is a super cheap Rode VideoMic Go. It's an awesome microphone. Although it is very inexpensive, it really gets the job done. You don't really need to configure it or worry about any sort of settings. Just plug it into the camera and it's good to go. The next camera I just want to talk really briefly about is the GoPro Hero 7 Black. I just got this camera a couple of weeks ago. It's an awesome camera for when I don't want to pull out my Panasonic to get a shot. It helps me to just get those one-off shots super quick. And at the same time, in the summertime, I'm super excited to use this camera underwater and cliff jumping and things of that nature. It's gonna be awesome, and I think it's gonna help get a lot of cool shots this summer. And last but not least, the last camera in my bag is the Nikon FE2. I mentioned this in one of my previous videos that I bought this camera, but I've been shooting with it a ton lately. When I was in Ireland a couple of weeks ago, I took almost all of my photos on this camera. So I'll show you a couple of those right here. This is just a super basic 35mm film camera with a 50mm f1.8 lens. It really gets the job done for anything that you would want to shoot on film. I've been shooting a lot of Kodak Portra film as well as a lot of Fujifilm Superia film. It's been a blast, and I really like the look that I'm getting with those photos. The very last thing that I want to talk about is the Peak Design Field Pouch. I keep it right here in this top compartment, and essentially all it is an organizer that allows for you to store different things like charging peripherals, camera straps, and things of that nature. For me personally, I have all the different chargers and cables for all the different cameras that I have. There's a ton of stuff to organize, and it really helps to have essentially a purpose-built thing that allows for you to organize all of those little knickknacks. One more thing that I almost forgot to mention is the thing that hangs off the side of my bag, and that's this little Manfrotto mini tripod. I don't like to carry around a full-blown tripod with me just because it adds so much bulk and so much weight to my bag. So what I do is I carry around this mini tripod that works with all my different cameras, and it allows for me, if I'm really in a pinch, to take some sort of a long exposure or to throw my video camera on it just to get a stabilized shot. This setup is pretty much my entire setup and everything that goes into this bag when I'm traveling and when I'm going on a photo trip. Although having 4 separate cameras sounds like a lot, to me it really isn't, just because I know that each of them have their own distinctive purposes. At the same time, I have a whole bunch of different lenses, but I never have any lenses that overlap in terms of focal length. I try to keep it relatively simple with gear so that I don't have to think about it when I'm out in the field. Whenever I see a scene or something unfolding in front of me, I know exactly what I need to grab in order to capture that scene. Anyways, I hope I gave you a little bit of insight in terms of the gear that I use to take my photos, as well as my methodology behind taking photos. If you liked the video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see some of my future content, hit the subscribe button as well. I'm gonna wrap this video up right here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my video next week. Peace.